what ideally FP&A or FP&A analyst or a person would actually do.
When you start, let's say at a junior level, the first couple of years is let's say generating reports, looking at those variances, getting the drivers out of it.
You have an exposure of global banking FP&A, but
Yeah.
if somebody wants to understand that somebody is suppose doing an FP&A in a manufacturing, how is global banking FP&A will be slightly different from your perspective?
This would slightly differ in terms of let's say the revenue stream for an investment banking to be particular.
So if somebody wants to start a journey in FP&A, generally what is the designation that he can grow into? What is the hierarchy that is generally followed?
The hierarchy probably would differ across the banks, but yeah, you start at a junior analyst role, where, as I said, the work is more around data driven. You have a large chunk of data.
So FP&A can become a stepping stone for you to be a CFO.
Yeah, definitely. See, while accounting is necessary to understand what is going with your firm, but what is also important, are we able to communicate that story to the senior management?
So what is the exposure that you get talking to the senior management in this role?
So let's say take an example of if a firm wants to enter, let's say, a niche market which is more into, let's say, the energy savings, the EV
Right.
stuff.
Do you see a lot of candidates who are in the global banking side? Okay, like you mentioned, wealth management, asset management. They are also coming to the FP&A team. Hello guys, I hope everybody is doing good. Hi, this is Ganesh Naik. I help finance professionals and students to excel in their career and become a better version of themselves. And I also help students preparing for competitive exams like CFA, FRM, and SCR. And as a part of that journey, I also interact with industry professionals and help students understand what is happening in different roles and what are the key skill sets that they need to enter into the corporate role in the right job. Okay, and as a part of that journey, as a part of that discussion, I'm with Dinesh, and he is going to walk us through the roles and the opportunity that is there in the FP&A segment, financial planning and analysis. So Dinesh, thank you very much for taking out time.
Thanks, Ganesh, for having me over. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Dinesh, let's start out with your journey, and if you can tell us, uh, how did you move into this particular role of FP&A, and what has been your experience till now?
I joined, let's say, an MNC in a global bank as a financial analyst. So, definitely, when you join financial analyst, the scope is limited in terms of it's more data driven, it's more monthly or weekly reporting of the financials to a specific business. But that's where I think I learned more about what the various products in a bank, how probably the various departments are interlinked. Let's say, taking an example for a treasury function, how does that look into in terms of the funding requirements, be it a loan product, how do you receive charge money to them, how do you collect or pay money to the deposit driven businesses. So that's where I think it helped me for the couple of years, helped me inculcate and probably gain that complete understanding of what are the various functions, and link whatever I had learned in my academic sessions to more into seeing that in a real world example. So those are, I think, the first couple of years.
So you joined as a financial analyst in the
Yeah.
global banking division
Yep.
itself.
Yeah.
Now, for the audience, if you could just tell us what exactly financial analysts do
Okay.
in a very simple language.
So, financial analyst, let's say that depends upon the level, but to start with, it would usually start with reporting. Now, when I say reporting, it's not just monthly preparation of numbers. That's where you need to analyze the trends, looking at where are your revenues, or let's say the expenses, where are they deviating from it, and then you connect with different departments, understand that if my revenue is, let's say, above or below the expectations, what is driving it. So knowing that business drivers, and then when you, let's say, grow up the ladder, you need to understand, what is driving that business, what are the drivers behind it, link it to a story which would help senior management in terms of, this is where we are progressing, this is where we need to shift this strategy to make sure that we are still on track to achieve the long term, let's say, your return goals from a banking perspective, or so that's how the journey progresses.
So you were there in this role for how many years?
So I was there in the roles, let's say, for a couple of years, the first 3 years, but after that I transitioned into, let's say, a product which focuses mostly on the corporate lending part of it. So you're looking at the loan requirements of a client, what are the loan portfolios, understanding how is bank involved. Let's say, is bank the only lending only client facilitating it, or it's a bunch of banks? So that's how
Okay.
that helps you. Okay, what are the money that you're going to earn out of it? And that's where I think you do then industry analysis, your competitive benchmarking, to help you understand, okay, is there a specific niche market that is growing more, and then you need to pitch in into that. So that's how I think the journey progresses.
Then move to the product. Now you were still not in FP&A as a part.
No. I think that was still part of FP&A, but I think the contribution in terms of what I was doing was much more niche than, let's say, what a senior FP&A leader would do in terms of looking at a complete balance sheet and a P&L perspective.
So from that product driven role, then you move to the core FP&A role.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've been in that role for how many years?
Now I think it's close to 7-8 years that I've been in that role.
Okay. And now for the audience, if you can tell what ideally FP&A or FP&A analyst or a person would actually do.
So, as I said earlier, when you start, let's say, at a junior level, the first couple of years is, let's say, generating reports, looking at those variances, getting the drivers out of it, and assisting your seniors in terms of, let's say, the financial planning, the forecasting. But even in that, let's say, you need a various strategies in terms of it. So, is it, let's say, a zero-based budgeting? When I say zero-based budgeting, if you are hiring, let's say, external consultants which help you bring that business. So, do you really need that 10 consultants? Do you really need 5 consultants into a specific sector? So these are like zero-based budgeting. The cost start, let's say, from zero every year. Or probably if you're looking, let's say, X number of bankers, so that's like the run rate basis. Okay, do you need X number of additional bankers to explore an industry or a sector which is upcoming, and you think that that will help you from a long term perspective? So that's more a trend based forecasting, or probably depending upon where you as a firm want to grow into.
Perfect. So now in the last 7 years, you have moved out of that niche role into entire aspect of a global bank.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Now, for the audience, if you can guide, because you have started in global MNCs and you've started from a very role at entry level role and moved to a senior level role. What has been your learnings, or what has been your 2 or 3 things that has helped you to move to that senior level role?
Okay, so first of a thing, I think it's more of a journey. So it's I would not say it's a specific decision, but it's more of a journey. But yeah, a couple of things that someone should actually keep in mind is looking for opportunities which are beyond your scope of work. So, and looking for, let's say, projects which are not specifically restricted to your work. So things like this help you interact more with the broader team, cross collaborate with the others. Then you tend to network, the way you participate in those projects, the way you lead the meeting. So that shows that, okay, these are the skills that you have already developed. The seniors see that, and probably that helps you, let's say, move up the ladder and probably change different roles, and then probably move up the ladder in that way.
Okay. Now, if anybody wants to get into a global banking side, we'll not explicitly talk about FP&A, but global banking side, what different roles could they explore? I'm talking about freshers.
Okay.
So, any thoughts on that?
So again, that depends upon where do we want to move. So considering, let's say, global bank, it has various verticals in it. So even, let's say, if I'm speaking about a global bank, it has various products, like, let's say, the investment banking, which is more an advisory or a capital raising fund. The corporate bank would more look at, let's say, what are the requirements of large institutional clients. Do they need specific loans? Do they need any treasury services, cash management services, or probably on the asset management side of things? So all of this, yes, definitely would require certain skill set in terms of key to the detail. You're looking out, you analyzing the stuff. Probably they differ slightly in terms of IB requiring more your financial modeling techniques, your valuation techniques. So that comes into the picture. But from a corporate banking, you need to maintain that relationship with the client, understanding the complex products that a bank has, how that will help the client, what are the strategies that the client can then enter into. Or probably for a wealth management, it would be, let's say, helping those HNI clients, the tailored products that they do need. So
Okay.
these are mostly broad things into it. Yes, all of this would definitely, let's say, also have a risk management team which would help clients. Okay, these are the risks that could be there, or the various scenarios of it. What they can do to mitigate those risks.
So if somebody wants to start a journey in FP&A, generally what is the designation that he can grow into? Or what is the hierarchy that is generally followed?
So again, the hierarchy probably would differ across the banks, but yeah, you start at a junior analyst role, where, as I said, the work is more around data driven. You have a large chunk of data, but you're making sure that are you able to bring out the story or bring out something more meaningful, where you have a story to build upon, and that ties back to the your
Business.
strategic decision and the business outcomes of it. As in when you grow, let's say, to a senior analyst or probably an associate, that's where I think the contribution is much more deeper in terms of storytelling to the stakeholders. That's where I think the stakeholder management also comes into the picture. And also you start then mentoring the juniors in terms of, okay, what are the techniques that they can use in terms of the financial modeling, the evaluation. So it's probably mentoring and fostering a team environment, as well as you learning those certain leadership skills.
So on an average, at an analyst level, how many years generally people spend?
So it's close to 2.5, 2 to 3 years is, I think, is an average period. But yeah, again, that depends upon person to person. In certain cases, depends upon the hierarchies that the bank has. Probably some banks have a huge hierarchy, and probably now in this changing dynamics, the banks are now going for a more short structure. So again, that would differ. But yeah, it's usually 2 to 3 years.
Years. And then, like you mentioned, senior analyst.
Yeah.
So that would also be around 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, say 2 to 3 years.
And after that senior analyst or an associate level, what is the next general level?
So it's usually like the senior associate or AVP across the various banks that they call it.
Okay. And how does your role change as you move to the top leadership?
Okay, so that's what I was telling. So while when you start it, you're looking at, let's say, a specific product, and even within that, you, let's say, look at a specific revenue stream for a product. As in when you grow, you're looking more at a complete P&L or the balance sheet of it. So what are the various balance sheet line items which drive your P&L? What are the assumptions that you have built in? Okay, down the line, you say that I have built a budget of let's say for next 2 to 3 years, but because of this changing dynamic world, or there are certain geopolitical scenarios, what are the assumptions that you need to tweak to still be on track to achieve it, or that will help you understand, okay, this is the change in the assumption, this is the impact that I can see it from a long term perspective.
And with respect to the skill set that you need at the top side, somebody who is at a VP or a AVP level, what is that one or two skill set that he needs to grow in that area?
So the first skill is then eye for the detail, and second I would go for is the analytical plus communication skills. Because when you're looking for details, but what really matters is, are you able to communicate that story to your senior stakeholders, to the non FP&A managers, that okay, this is what the business is telling the picture about. Are we then probably that should, then they should help be able to take that decisions in forward.
So somebody who's working in FP&A, he will have an impact on the final financial statements of the company also.
Yes, definitely, and also on the strategy that the firm is looking into.
Okay. So what is the exposure that you get talking to the senior management in this role?
So let's say take an example of if a firm wants to enter, let's say, a niche market which is more into, let's say, the energy savings, the EV stuff. But now when you look at it, okay, the firm would need capital, you will need to invest in that. But that seems to be a capital drag from a short term perspective. But then what you need to analyze and present to the senior stakeholder management is, okay, while this is a capital drag from a short term perspective, you look at the returns from a more longer term perspective. Probably that will help you achieve the return target that, let's say, the bank or the MNC has committed to the street. So that's the kind of the top level strategies that you work along with the senior management and give them the pathway to achieve it.
Okay. Do you see a lot of candidates who are in the global banking side
Mhm.
Okay, like you mentioned, wealth management, asset management. They are also coming to the FP&A team.
Yep, kind of it. So because of this dynamic world, there are usually people coming in and going out as well. Because and we have also seen recent cases where people from FP&A are actually going into roles and to become CFOs of the organizations. Gone are the days that you need to have a complete accounting background to go to the top level positions.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
This is an interesting point. So FP&A can become a stepping stone for you to be a CFO.
Yeah, definitely. See, while accounting is necessary to understand what is going with your firm, but what is also important, are we able to communicate that story to the senior management? How are we understanding? Okay, what is coming out of the your numbers? How
Right.
are we performing in terms of it? Okay, what are the assumptions that you had in your plan, and what do we need to change it to? So these things are like these stepping stones, and that you do in day out in your FP&A role.
Wow.
So that's where I think the storytelling becomes really important, and that helps you elevate it to the larger roles.
Okay, and a lot of time what happens is that we have audience who have queries like they are currently in a core accounting setup.
Mhm,
They are working in an accounting team and they want to move to FP&A.
mhm.
So first of all, is it possible? Second, what they should do?
So definitely it's possible. See, while accounting, let's say, helps you with understanding your financial statements, are they true? Are they aligned to, let's say, the standards, accounting standards? So
Right.
that means that you have a very good base in terms of understanding the numbers.
Right.
Now there are certain few skills that you need to develop. So okay, if these are the numbers, what is leading to the drivers behind that? You need to develop that analytical skills. Okay, how do you translate that numbers into a story? How do you build it into a strategic decisions, or probably translate it into how it is moving in terms of the firm wide strategy? Where are we contributing? So these are certain, let's say, analytical skills, and then probably variance and forecasting, budgeting. So once you know the numbers, you then understand, okay, how is that performing vis-a-vis the trend, and what needs to be done in, if you want to look at, let's say, forecasting perspective.
Okay, okay. And uh, you have an exposure of global banking FP&A, but
Yeah.
if somebody wants to understand that somebody is supposed doing an FP&A in a manufacturing company, how is global banking's FP&A will be slightly different from your perspective?
So overall, both the FP&A would still have that broad term objective of, let's say, meeting their long term financial goals. This would slightly differ in terms of, let's say, the revenue stream for an investment banking to be particular is not is episodic in nature. So let's say for a traditional manufacturing FP&A, you will have, let's say, the product subscription, the product sales that drives you. But here it's more dynamic in terms of the market driven. How are the client sentiments? What is the deal pipeline that a bank has? So you need to take into consideration, okay, is there an interest rate cut that the client expects? So that might lead the client to delay the capital raising that they want to do it, or probably because of the certain political scenarios that would help them accelerate the plan in terms of your mergers and acquisitions. So those are the things to be considered along with, let's say, your trading volumes that you see.
Now, more from a career perspective, do
Mhm.
CAs only get into FP&A?
No, definitely not. So,
You
and
are
I say
an
that, yeah, I say that because I am in MBA and a CFA. But again, see, all this, as I said, all these certifications provide us the technical knowledge. What FP&A demands is certain skill set, like looking into detail, probably doing that analysis, doing that variance reporting, and looking more churning that huge chunk of data into something which is more presentable to the seniors. So that's where I think your Excel skills, your PowerPoint skills comes into the picture.
Okay. So in your day-to-day activity, you use a lot of Power BI, Tableau.
Yeah. So see, again, these are some of the tools that will definitely keep changing, that will keep coming out. But what you need to understand is, once you have that tools, how are you able to churn that data into a format which is more crisp, and for the leaders to read it out of it.
Okay, wonderful. Now you've done CFA, okay, and
Mhm.
you started out as a financial analyst, then you moved to the AVP role also. Now,
Mhm.
what is one or two points that you can talk about to CFA students
Mhm.
who might want to go into the core finance roles? I mean, specifically to FP&A.
Yeah. So let's say what I learned in CFA was, let's say that the cash flow techniques, your valuation techniques like discounted cash flow, the multiple valuations cash flow.
Hmm.
So those help you with the technical knowledge that you needed. Now, what you need to do is, okay, what behind this? What behind the techniques? Okay, if there are these assumptions, how do you translate that? Techniques into a more business wide strategy. Now let's say if you're valuing a firm, okay,
Hmm.
this is the valuation, but what about the future forecast of it?
Okay.
That's where your analytical capabilities come into the picture. But yeah, CFA definitely helped me with understanding the banking products, the valuation techniques into detail, and that served as a base to, let's say, work upon it.
Right, right. And today, a lot of young candidates, what they are also doing is they are doing CFA plus they are doing financial modeling.
Mhm.
Now, most of them they plan to go to equity research.
Okay.
But now I wanted to ask you this: that if you do CFA plus financial modeling,
Mhm.
will this also open up a door for FP&A
Yeah,
to that extent?
definitely, definitely. Because see, when we say financial modeling, it helps you with what are the valuation techniques of it. How are you developing a model? And as I took that example of the investment banking,
Hmm.
so when you're forecasting, let's say, revenues and expenses for it, the
Right.
model has to be really complex. It takes, let's say, what are the interest rate movements, what is the GDP growth rate that is expected across the geographies,
Hmm.
what's, let's say, the unemployment rate that you're looking. So and all these multinational banks have, let's say, an yearly submission of the stress forecasting results.
Right.
So that helps you, that modeling background or probably the knowledge helps you understanding it. Okay, what if there is a stress scenario? How are the banks going to perform? How resilient are your financials in
Okay.
terms of your stress scenarios?
Okay.
What are the sensitivity testing? So yeah, that definitely comes
Okay. Wonderful.
out of it.
So I mean, these are interesting questions for the audience. That's why I
Mhm.
explicitly
No, no,
asked.
no.
And from the interview perspective, now you have been taking a lot of interviews
Mhm.
in the FP&A field.
Mhm.
What is that one or two things that you have seen people don't follow in interview, or they make mistakes in interviews, basically?
Okay, so again, even when I interview not only people from the, let's say, the FP&A domain, but even
Hmm.
non-FP&A domain, certainly what we are looking for in a candidate is the willingness to transition into an FP&A role. So I
Hmm.
think an interviewee would usually look for what is the positive attitude, what how the candidate is willing to learn. That willingness is what I think you usually look for.
Okay, okay. So, and you do look for people from CA background,
Yeah.
ACCA background. We definitely look at the certification part. And generally, the interviews that FP&A has, is it only face to face, or there is some technical round also being given in those interviews?
Again, that depends upon the bank that you're applying for and
Okay.
probably the role that you're looking for.
Hmm.
So, at a junior level, there are technical rounds when a bank is visiting, let's say, for campus placements. But as in when you grow up the ladder and the interviews for, let's say, senior roles, that's where I think your skill sets comes into the picture. How are you
Hmm.
positioning yourself of how you will contribute to the firm? What are your skill set that would be helpful to the firm from a long term perspective?
And also, if somebody is coming from a different, not from
Mhm.
global banking, so you might
Mhm.
try to understand whether he understood the business well.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to tell you. So
Okay.
sometimes you need to be prepared. Okay, you're giving, let's say, an interview for an XYZ firm. You have not worked for it, that is into a slightly different sector or a different domain, but
Hmm.
your preparation for it tells the interview that, okay, you have prepared a good amount of it and a willingness to learn new things.
Okay, interesting. Rapid fire question, the last section.
Yeah.
What is the most underrated skill in finance?
As I told you, the positive attitude and the willingness to learn new things is, I think, will definitely take you up.
Okay. One piece of advice you will give to your younger self.
Take more risk at a more younger age, and then probably you learn more out of it rather than doing those later.
Okay. If not finance, what alternate careers would you would have chosen?
uh, I would have continued with my graduation in engineering, so I would probably continued with that engineering background and be in a slightly different world that I'm in today.
Okay. Wonderful, Dinesh. This conversation is going to be really helpful for a lot of candidates or young people who are planning to get into global banking or get into FP&A. So your experience and conversation will definitely help me. So thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Ganesh. I hope this interview does help student with the journey in the longer term.
Yes, definitely.